audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the fall!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Thursday, June 6th. I hope everyone's good. You're watching me right now on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. It is the Sick Podcast, and thank you for doing so. The Sick Podcast, of course, brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group. Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. Also brought to you in part by people behind me. Look at that fridge. That's stacked with Bittt at Tibi. Bittt Tibi, brewed in Quebec, will win over a dozen international awards. Bittt Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. Bittt Tibi, embrace your true nature. A shout out to Souvlaki Authentique, a family-operated Greek restaurant, 7 locations. They use fresh Quebec chicken and fresh Quebec pork, both hand-cut, marinated in-house. Their gyro is hand-stacked in-house, never frozen, no MSG in any of the recipes. Greek potatoes, not your yayas. Greek potatoes, unique lemon sauce, that is. Thank you to our friends Terry and Costa. Souvlaki Authentique, of course, once again, with 7 locations in and around Greater Montreal. And there's Vaudreuil, there's El Perot, there's Pierrefonds, Lachine, Les Coteaux, Ville-Marie. We were there a couple of weeks ago, and we plan on going to another one of their locations. I believe it's going to be in Boisbriand, as a matter of fact, in the very near future here. So look out for that. We had such a great time. We've decided to go back, and we say hello to them. I say hello to Eric Engels, who's usually a collaborator on Mondays, but he joined me a week ago on a Thursday from Souvlaki Authentique. So 1 week later, we get him back on a Thursday again for Sportsnet and Sportsnet.ca. What's going on?
What's going on, Tony? Can you hear me well?
I can, yeah, very well, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Okay, good, because we've been having crazy construction going on in my building. They're redoing the whole garage. And when you live in Griffintown, it's not a good thing when they're redoing your garage, but I guess it's a necessary thing.
It's Montreal, and if there's no construction on the roads, there's construction in the condo buildings, and sometimes there's construction on both at the same time. And B, I like Griffintown very much. Wow, I didn't know you were in Griffintown. I think you actually mentioned to me before, but I forgot. That's a great area to live in, by the way.
Yeah, I love it. We're right on the canal, and it's a wonderful place, but it's not exactly a place where you don't want to have indoor parking, and we've been deprived of it for a little while, and it'll still be a little while longer, but these are things that pop up when you.
Yeah, this is where you send an email and you ask for a discount on the rent for this month because of the inconvenience. So that's what you got to do, man. So you got to do.
I don't know about that.
Hey, listen, I would try. Combine. You know, the National Hockey League, of course, has been off over the last couple of days, and the Stanley Cup final is going to start on Saturday, much to the chagrin of several. I'm one of them. But at the same time, at least during the time between, you know, the end of last series and game 1 starting in the Stanley Cup final, at least you sprinkle in the combine there, and all eyes and all the focus is on the combine. I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a great thing. You know what? It's a great thing for most people. I'm a bit of a curmudgeon when it comes to the draft and the whole conversation around it because I find it to be so polluted. I think you and I have talked about this before, but, you know, for those people who don't know my views on this, even though I've stated them in my columns and in different places on social media, you know, I find the draft discourse is very two-sided. In one way, it's amazing. You know, the level of interest from people in prospects and the amount of reading and research they want to do and videos and highlights and all that stuff is phenomenal. What I don't like about it is debate based mostly on segments and nuggets of information versus the whole picture, which, you know, unfortunately for you and me, as much as we try and dig, the people who really have the full picture are the people who are doing the drafting. You know, these are the people that have invested 5 years in watching a prospect, speaking to everybody around them, going through individual clips, going through games, watching full games, attending games, picking up habits, picking up rates of progression, reading all about them in different places, maybe even public places like the fans have access to. But these decisions don't come down to watching a 10-minute highlight clip and whatever your favorite prognosticator on whatever website has to say about these players. And so when the draft happens and the Canadiens are picking at number 5 and they take a David Reinbacher and people flip out and say they've reached and gone, they don't know anything. Like, they know very little. They're looking at something through a vacuum without having so much of the information. I find that discourse has become so polluted in the age of social media, because now everybody's got an opinion, and everybody used to have an opinion, but now we hear them all, you know, like.
Yeah. So now, I very much agree with a lot of what you're saying. And I've said this before, and I'm not going to be shy to say it. I'm not going to pretend to know everything there is to know about these prospects. I make that clear. I don't bullshit anybody. All right. And anybody who does full-time radio or full-time television or full-time podcasting, talking about NHL or the entire league or covering a team in particular, you can't be two places at once. You just can't. So everyone who pretends to say, you know what, I've seen this player play 100 times, no problem. Show me every time you show me your schedule, what it was like, and show me when you went to see those. Now, for those who own independent scouting services and for those who do podcasts talking about draft prospects like Grant McCagg, I know that Grant spends a lot of time going over video, probably, and you know, going to arenas near him. There are some who go from arena to arena to arena. I have a lot of time of day for those, but for those who have a regular job or 2 jobs or 3 jobs, to say that you know all these kids and you scouted them and you've seen them, I don't buy that.
You know what? It's more than that, and I want to be clear here. Those people who, like Grant, and I don't need to name a bunch of names. I think everybody knows who they are, who are dedicated to draft coverage. The amount, and we have Sam Cosentino at Sportsnet, who's fantastic. The amount of work that they do to unearth the information that becomes publicly available through their work, we can't thank them enough. You know, we are centering our entire discourse and debate and conversation on the work that they have done, because like you said, Tony, you're running your podcast 5 days a week. I'm covering the Montreal Canadiens, you know, 24/7, and don't have time to be doing live viewings and forming my own opinions on these players. But for as much information as those guys get, and they get more of it than anybody, they're still missing some of the picture that's what these teams employ an entire staff worth of people to gather that information that would be inaccessible to anybody else. And so that is something that I just wish the fans kept in mind a little more, because they read that work, they view and consume that work and podcasts and this and that, and they parrot it as their own opinion. And so when the draft unfolds, it starts to become a complete debate about how this team was out of their minds for going to get this player at this time. And it's just,
having said that,
and what's the last thing I'll say about it, Tony,
yes,
what makes it so overly bad, and why I use the word polluted, is because the general discourse in the world right now is not a calm, rational conversation between people who are debating things. It's, let me tell you how incredibly wrong you are and how stupid you are. Like, and it's already nauseating with all the other stuff we deal with, but it's particularly nauseating on this subject with 18-year-olds and people thinking they know everything because they watched a 10-minute highlight pack and read a couple articles. I mean,
fair enough on all points. Having said all of that, I still think it's kind of funny, though, when 90% of the people who have never seen any of these players play are up in arms saying that Kotkaniemi was the wrong pick because of videos and things that they heard from people showing snippets here and there. And in the end, they're right. That's kind of funny, too, though.
Oh, my God. I don't want to go back on Kotkaniemi because I think Kotkaniemi is the easiest hindsight 2020 Monday morning quarterback kind of conversation possible. And, you know, like, if I have to go back on it a little bit, like, there is historical context in the Canadiens not having a big centerman for 25 straight years, and Marc Bergevin spending the first 8 years of his tenure talking about how you can't trade for them and you can't sign them and you have to draft them.
Yeah, I'm convinced that part of that pick was Trevor Timmons saying, I have to help out my GM now, who keeps on saying that you can't trade for centermen, you have to draft them. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why he had Kotkaniemi at number 3.
Listen, no matter whether he was the highest ranked centerman in that draft, period. Whether it was the Canadiens or anybody else ranking him, he had risen to the point where, as far as the center ice position was concerned, he was the highest ranked center in the draft. So, but anyways, that's beside the point, because now we can all look back on it and say it wasn't the right pick. Fine, no problem. I mean, the Canadiens fans were desperate for them to pick Philip Zadina at the time.
The look on that lady's face in the stands, though, was something, though.
Maybe he'll still be a player. You know what else? Like when Slavkovsky got off the bus and walked up to the Bell Center ahead of being drafted first overall by the Canadiens, fans who want to chain right so badly let him hear it in a negative way. I was there. I was outside. And as early as this year, as much as people didn't like that Arizona Coyotes tweet about Logan Cooley and the Vince McMahon meme and when you don't draft this kid, and how many of them are saying now that they would rather have Cooley than Slavkovsky? And the irony being that out of all the GMs, forget about the scouts, because the scouts themselves know much more than the GMs do about most players. But if you were thinking of one player that a GM might know better than some of the scouts, it would be Logan Cooley and Kent Hughes.
Yes.
So it's just,
there's some history there.
It's not to go back on each one of these decisions, whatever it is. It's just to say everything we think we know, we're so far off from knowing all there is to know. And I just wish that infiltrated the conversation a little bit more, especially in an age where there is no rational debate about anything. It's always, here's why you're wrong and why you're so incredibly, terribly wrong.
Yeah.
And name calling and all the nonsense. And it's just, I think it's crazy. The same way, I think people are looking right now at the combine, right? It's combine this week, and physical testing is the main reason that all these players come down to the combine. Well,
how many chin-ups can they do?
How many, and well, this kid's a beast and this kid's undersized and I don't know. And, I think the physical testing is really just a part of the combine. I'm not there covering it. I think access is an interesting thing around the combine. We do have a couple of people from Sportsnet there, which is one of the reasons why I'm home. But
it should be called character testing. That's what it is. It's not physical testing. It's character testing. So I'll tell you a quick story. I'll tell you a quick story. So my son's back from Portugal, and in about in less than a month, he's going to leave for his next venture, which is probably most likely going to be in Spain. It's still up in the air, but it'll probably be in Spain. And yesterday, I brought him to training. Okay, and I brought him to training yesterday, and he's training with like an elite group, a group of about 12 or 13, 14 players during their off season. Players who are in similar situations as him, and they're getting ready before they actually go to camp, right? And he's in shape, okay, big time. And yesterday, the trainer there made them all run around the entire field, right? So from corner A to B to C to D, and basically an entire soccer field or entire football field, right? And made my son start probably, a huge amount, maybe a third of the field behind everyone else.
It was also 100 degrees yesterday.
Yeah, it was really, really hot. And at the end of the race, my son did really well. The trainer went up to him and said, "You know why I did that?" And he said, "No." And he said, "I was testing you." So they're looking for, what's the body language when I make him start way behind everyone else? How does he react to the situation? Does he give up at one point saying it's defeated here? There's no way I'm going to be able to pass the other guys because I'm starting way behind them. Or does he keep fighting right until the end? And whether even if he wins the race or not, does he just fight right to the end, believing that he can? It's character testing. That's exactly what's going on at the combine. It's not about how many pull-ups you can do. It's about when you think that you can't do anymore, if you'll give everything in your heart and soul to actually attempt to do that extra pull-up. That's what it's all about.
And it will be backed up within the interview process where a sports psychologist is present for the Canadiens, and I'm sure for most other teams, where they are wanting to find out just how much they're about themselves, just how much they're about their team, what's the balance between ego and arrogance. And, arrogance in sports, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but you need a certain level of confidence that borders on arrogance. Ego is not necessarily a great quality in life if it overtakes everything, but it is a particularly important quality for those who ascend to the top level of anything. You need to have a certain sense of ego. Can that be more than what your sense of team is? No. And that's what these processes are for. People will look at the physical testing. Can this kid do a pull-up? Look at how fast he ran the beat test, if they still do that. I don't think so. The bike test, the VO2 max, and it'll be a topic of conversation. It'll be a topic of conversation as to whether or not players who were injured during the year can alleviate any concerns, like a Caden Lindstrom, for example. We heard about an 18-year-old kid who had some back problems. The combine and a physical element of it is very important, but there are plenty of the greatest players of all time, and some of the greatest players currently playing in the game that went to the combine and couldn't do a single pull-up. But you're right, Tony. Those GMs, those coaches, those scouts, they want to see how hard he's going to try to do that one, even if he can't do one.
Yeah.
And so that's revealing of character, and how they respond. One of the things I remember Nick Bobrov and Marty LaPointe talking about when it came to Slafkovsky, and one of the main reasons they chose him, not only because he wanted to be the man, whether they were down 4-3 or up 4-3 in a game in the final minute.
Yeah.
They were talking about his ability to handle pressure, but one of the things that really stood out, I can't remember if it was Bobrov and LaPointe or it was Hughes who said it. It was that there was nothing put on about the way he responded. He responded instinctually to their questions, and there was a genuine kind of expression in anything that he said, that it wasn't like, I'm giving you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I think, and you either like the answer or you don't.
Yeah.
I can't say whether or not that was the same situation with Shane Wright when they spoke with him.
From the heart and not from his head.
Right.
Yeah.
Neither of us were in those interviews. I don't know what happened in the interview with Shane Wright or Logan Cooley or anybody else. But it's possible that you get a prospect that you have ranked pretty high, that you have a high opinion of from a hockey perspective, and you're looking to back it up with these different things. And then all of a sudden, you start hearing the answers that the player's giving you that he thinks you want to hear. And I don't want to say that's enough of a turnoff that you're just going to turn away from a player completely, but it has to be taken into consideration, because you think about what they're really evaluating in there when they do these tests and they do these conversations. They're really evaluating, like you said, character. They want to make sure that what they have is somebody that they can believe in, that they'll be honest with, but they expect the same honest, and somebody who has a trouble being honest with themselves. Someone who wants to give answers just because they think that's what people want to hear, that could be revealing of something different, right? And I'm not saying any of those kids did that, but I'm saying if they did, it could be something that would have them turn in another direction. Like they did bring it up that with Slap, they got the answer that
it's funny. Yeah,
that's my answer.
Eric, it's funny you're saying this, because don't ask me why, but I do this every now and then. I go back and I keep looking at draft coverage. I mean, that Slafkovsky draft night, I think I watched it like 1,000 times. All right. The whole draft day and the players going out and making their way into the building and stuff like that. And, oh, Shane, oh my God, Shane, you're the man. You're Shane. I watched it all, right? He comes in, he's signing autographs. Yeah. I watch all this stuff. And it's funny because from the outside, the perception that I get, and I could be wrong, is when I hear Shane Wright, or I heard Shane Wright in interviews, he sounded like a guy who was prepping for an interview, right? Before you go for a big interview, your good buddy, your girlfriend, sister, cousin, whatever. They prep you. They ask you
You know
questions,
what?
and they
We were
tell
both
you
there.
what to answer.
We were both there when they had that day before the draft.
Yes.
They had a media availability.
Yes.
And I got to tell you,
in Montreal somewhere, I think, right?
I thought Shane Wright came off extremely polished. He impressed me. I thought he was extremely polished. It was very interesting listening to him talk, the way he talked about himself, the way he carried himself. And that's a perfect example of, and I'm not saying he doesn't have high character or he's not polished or he is not, it's just a question of fit and whether or not people like that. And I still think he could be a player, but I'm just saying that, like, all the information that we think we know, the perception that we get just based on a one-off conversation, think about the people that are making these decisions. They're based on 5, 6, 7 years of monitoring a prospect.
Yes.
Rate of progression of all those conversations with people around them, coaches, players, parents, girlfriends. It goes so deep that I don't even think people realize. And the other thing is, like, as everyone questions every decision, Tony, like, who has more incentive to get this right than these people? Like, look at the salary cap era. Is there anything more important than the process these teams go through to get these players?
Of course, yeah.
Like,
it's funny though. Perception.
I'm not saying they don't do wrong. Like, they get things wrong. Like everybody else, they're gonna make mistakes. Like, it's just the fact. They're gonna be fooled by a player or two. They're gonna be fooled by a player's profile or two. Like,
but it's funny how guys like you and I can see things differently too, right? Because for you, he came across as extremely polished. For me,
I was impressed.
For me, he came across as someone who was almost programmed to answer certain questions a certain way, especially that day and the day after type of thing. And when we talk about genuine, I thought they thought, you know what, just Slavkovsky. And when they asked him, well, how did you learn how to cook? Well, the right answer probably is I did some research. I took a look at some YouTube videos. I had a cook come in and a chef come in and actually teach me. He's like, I FaceTime my mother. It was just a lot more genuine. And I think they liked that his guard was down and that he could be himself, because then they really knew who he was instead of being programmed to answer a certain way. And then you're not sure if that person is like that or they're not like that. Anyway,
Can I say this about Shane Wright? Can I just say one thing? I really hope Shane Wright has a great NHL career.
Yeah, so
honestly.
do I.
Like, you think about what he went through, like being the projected number one for years and years and having that pressure on him as he completed his junior hockey career, and the pressure to jump straight into the NHL and not making it right away after being passed over by 3 teams and getting drafted 4th overall, and how much it must have burned him up. And like, at the end of the day, like, it's so easy to forget, like, he was an 18-year-old kid. Like, we all grow up and we all progress at different rates. And I think it would be a great story if this kid ends up having a great NHL career.
Yeah, honestly. I hope so. You watch that coverage once again, and he thinks he's going 1, and when he's not, you see the disappointment. And then he thinks he's going 2, and you see the disappointment. And he looks at his dad and he goes, you know what? I'm happy. Arizona, that's where I want to go at number 3. And then Logan Cooley's picked at number 3. And then he's like, that hurts. And so, I agree with you. Hey, look, everywhere I go over the last couple of weeks, a lot of people are loving the NHL playoffs, saying that it's been the best playoffs in quite some time. Not so sure you agree with that, but everywhere I'm going, a lot of people are saying, I'm watching the playoffs and I'm realizing just how far away the Canadiens are. And I'm like, well, yeah, they're in a rebuild, I guess. And then they follow up and they ask me, well, how far away do you think they are? And I don't know how many years they're away. It all depends on who they're going to draft and who they're going to acquire via trade, because, they're obviously going to do both. So when you hear that comment, hey, Eric, you're watching the playoffs, man, it's can't believe how far the Canadiens are from these teams that are in the final. You think what? You say what?
What I think is, like, where do you want them to be? Because if you really want them to be like one of those 2 teams, they can't take a shortcut there. I think where these processes get screwed up is that, inevitably patience wears thin, either above management or within management, one wrong move happens, and then it sets off a chain reaction of events where all of a sudden your plan that you thought was solid and oak takes a turn that you couldn't foresee, and you get set back a few years. And I think we've seen it with teams around the Montreal Canadiens. Look at where Buffalo is. Look at what's happened in Ottawa. Look at what happened in Edmonton for 10 years before they got their act together and found themselves where they are right now. It's very tempting you've acquired a lot of really premium young talent, and all of a sudden you start giving the keys over to I want to take it in a totally different direction here, Tony, because I've been thinking about this myself. We're all sitting here trying to project who the 6 defensemen are going to be for the Canadiens and who's going to get traded out of town to make room and all this stuff. You've got Mayu, you've got Hudson, you've got Reinbacher, and everybody's wondering which 2 of the 3 are going to start the year in the NHL because they all look like they're just about ready to pop. Is it a doomsday scenario if all 3 of those players start the year in the American Hockey League because the Canadiens haven't moved that many defensemen out and they still have good young defensemen on their blue line, and they could buy those kids time and they could give them an opportunity to develop in the AHL together as part of a winning atmosphere in Laval because they'll be contributing to that and they'll be getting key professional experience? Is that some kind of loss? I think you want them coming to camp feeling as though they have a chance to make the team, that they will make it on merit if they're there.
Yeah.
But
I see no problem with it, by the way. And you could probably even make an argument that it's the best case scenario.
What's the rush? What's the rush here? You have a bunch of young defensemen above them, too, who have just gained anywhere between 60 and 130 games of NHL experience. I know everybody is running to trade Jordan Harris or Jaden Struble or Justin Barron, and chances are 1 or 2 of these players is going to end up out of town. But we hear about Mike Matheson and David Savard nonstop. The Canadiens are a couple of years away from where everybody wants them to be. In a best case scenario, in 2 years from now, all of a sudden they've become a contender. I think in a more realistic scenario, it's 3 or 4 years from now. But if you really want them to get there, if you really want them to achieve that status and have it over year, which is what their plan is, there has to be a balance between patience for that process to happen and a certain level, to borrow from Marty St. Louis, of aggression to ensure that they're taking progressive steps there. That it's not, we're just patient and we know it's going to take 2 to 4 years and we'll just have to sit back and let it happen. You have to progress along the way, be it as a group, also individually, and from a management perspective, start turning some of the assets that you've accumulated into better players that advance your program forward. But what you don't want is for them to get antsy and say, you know what, it's been 2 years and, we haven't made the playoffs and now we got to make the playoffs. And if we don't make the playoffs, we got to make these moves to make the playoffs. That's where all of a sudden you get into that territory where, you come out at the beginning of the year and say, rebuild's over. And guess what, Pierre Dorion, it's not. It's not over.
So having said that, Craig Button and I were taking a look at the roster composition and how the Panthers were built. And we're doing the same thing for the Edmonton Oilers. And, we know it's a copycat league and a lot of teams will take a look at, why other teams are successful. And what Pierre said was a turning point, obviously, for the Florida Panthers. What Craig said was a turning point for the Florida Panthers, was a very bold move. And Matthew Tkachuk wanted out of Calgary. The Florida Panthers, I think, got swept in the second round by Tampa. And it was not a great playoff for Jonathan Huberdeau, but it was a great regular season. And Bill Zito recognized that A, his team needed more sandpaper and character. And B, he probably was going to have to move Huberdeau to make the money work for Tkachuk. So that deal gets done. And Craig said, Bill Zito made a very bold move. Sometimes you need to make a very bold move. And I asked him if the acquisition of Kirby Dach, giving up Romanov to the Islanders and a couple of draft picks, the acquisition of Newhook, a couple of draft picks, if that was a very bold move, and it was not. Do you think a very bold move is coming in this offseason of 2024? I know the entire city and the entire fan base is hoping and expecting that a second-line winger be acquired by the Montreal Canadiens. Would that be a bold move to package a defenseman, a pick, a prospect to acquire that? How bold a move is that?
I don't know. I think we all have different definitions of that word. And honestly, I think Bill Zito, I think he's fantastic, and he's likely to be named Executive of the Year, given the work that he's done. But I don't want to sit here and say that what he did was such a bold move when Matthew Tkachuk essentially cornered the Calgary Flames and said, it's going to be Florida or potentially, I think Carolina might have been the other team that was in there.
Yeah.
And I get it. You've got to trade a player in Huberdeau who had 115 points. And Mackenzie Weegar, who was obviously a productive player, but I think he knew he was going to become a much better playoff team with Matthew Tkachuk coming in. I think that was the main thing that he said when he got him. And to credit him uniquely for that as like a super bold move that he made to put the Panthers over the top, I guess so. But when a player is holding a gun to a team's head as an RFA, going UFA within a year in a contract negotiation saying he's not going to sign with you long term, and the only place he'll go is basically the place he got traded to, it's just a sample of sometimes you need to get lucky, and sometimes that window needs to open up where something great happens to you. When Jeff Gordon was in New York, Adam Fox uniquely wanted to play in New York. He got his way traded out of two places just to be there. Artemi Panarin was debating, should I go to Florida? Should I go to New York? And for as great as the New York Rangers are, I'm pretty sure the allure of New York City is what won Artemi Panarin over in New York, and I think Jeff Gordon's a great executive. And maybe he could speak to this, and maybe I'm completely wrong, and he's got a different backstory to it. But that's kind of the luck of the draw, where sometimes something falls in your lap and you say, okay, we're going to take advantage. You still have to take advantage of it and make it happen and negotiate it and make it work. So I don't want to take credit away from Zito. I don't want to take credit away from Gordon. But if we're looking at these things as like a model, what you have to hope is that the right player becomes available for Kent Hughes to pounce. So if you want something really bold, it's not as simple as saying, oh, they're going to add a second line center. No. They're going to a second line winger. They're going to add a first line winger who, if they're good enough within their top six, he could be playing on their second line.
Yeah.
And if they're able to get that accomplished, I would consider that bold. I don't agree with Craig, and I agree with Craig on a million things. We don't have to agree on everything. I think the trade for Kirby Dach was a very bold move when they made it. Less so Duhook, but I think very bold. Trading Romanov at the time that they did, recognizing they had a surplus at a certain area, picking up the extra draft pick, trading high picks to get to Dach, and Dach coming at a time where, let's face it, his rep was of a player that was under delivering based on what his potential was. So to not consider that to be a bold move and a roll of the dice. Now, maybe what Craig means in terms of his boldness being muted a little bit is that there wasn't so much risk in it that it would blow up in their face completely. There was plenty of potential left in Dach, plenty of ceiling above his head, and they weren't paying a prohibitive price, not only in terms of acquiring him, but in terms of the contract they ended up signing him to, right? So I think, however you want to qualify it, the point is, getting back to the original point, like sometimes you need something to really just fall your way. Something like, and that's going to need to happen along the way for the Canadiens in this process, for them to really get ahead to that next level that everybody wants to see them at. And if you're out there and you're sitting there saying, okay, we're watching Edmonton, we're watching Dallas, New York, and Florida, and now it's Florida and Edmonton, and like, it just makes me realize how far the Canadiens are. It's like, yeah, they're 2 years into an official rebuild. Like, they've already, you could look at it as they're so far off, or you could look at it and say, you know what? You look at the way they're actually doing it. When they do get there, it will work if they stick to that plan. There's one last thing I'll say, and I want to turn it over to you and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a vital thing. When you look at the process that Slavkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki, Gooley have undertaken, and Dach as well, who's sitting in on these meetings while he's injured, and he's probably looking at these players and what they did over the last year and just foaming at the mouth to be a part of this. look at the way they've submitted to the process to becoming more complete players and what they've bought into with Marty St. Louis, because that is going to pay dividends when they get to the age where they're expected to contend. Because I'll tell you, man, I've been in other markets and I've seen other players who that didn't happen for when they were 22, 23, 24, and they're at 26, 27, 28, and they can't change. They can't just all of a sudden discover what it takes to become a winner. I think these kids have that quality, and you look at it. You look at a player like Caulfield, the way he turned around from, okay, I could be a great goal scorer in this league, to no, I want to become a complete player and I'll sacrifice some of the goals and do what Marty's telling me. That says a lot, and that's going to be at the foundation of for every player that's coming in here, because when they look at those four guys, Slafkovsky, Gouli, Suzuki, Caulfield, and see that they've done it, there's no, well, I'm just going to be me. That doesn't work. And I think there's problems like that in Ottawa that they're going to have to rectify with their new coaching staff and management. There's problems like that in Buffalo that they're going to have to rectify. This is what I'm talking about. What do you think?
And what I think is, and you just touched on something, and the players committing to be better players, better all-around players, working to be better players. But I also think this is why, what's important here is their locker room. I think Canadiens got a very, very good locker room. Now, you spend a lot more time in it than I do because you're with them 24/7 pretty much at home and on the road. But for years and years and years that I've been covering this team, the players pretty much every year come out and say how good the locker room is. And, there were years where I didn't think it was very good, and they said it was good. And A, maybe it was, and I was wrong. B, what do you want them to say? It's not like they're going to come out and tell you they have a terrible locker room. But the year that I thought they had a really good locker room, they went far and they made the final in 21. And I think they got a really good locker room right now. And this is why everyone's talking about, a top 6 forward coming in and acquiring, making a trade. You better do your homework, and you better make sure you end up getting the right guy, because one bad guy can destroy your locker room. Having said that, I talked to Craig Button about Evander Kane last night, and I said I was wrong, because if I was Edmonton, I would not have touched him. Maybe earlier on in his career, I would have made a trade for him. But after knowing everything that we know, or after hearing everything that we heard, I wouldn't have taken that chance on him. And he said, if one player will destroy your locker room, then your locker room isn't that strong to begin with. And I thought that was a really good point. Having said that, I don't know how solid the Canadiens locker room is, but I know it's a group of guys that like each other. They spend a lot of time with each other away from the ice. They have fun with each other and together. And, I think they're going to have to be careful here. Their next
look, I don't know who's going to be available to them, and that's the ultimate question, right? Like, everybody wants to know. Everybody's talking about 2 players in specific with Martin Necas and Trevor Zegras. You have no idea who else might be on the list that might become available suddenly, that certain teams wanting to shake things up and want to make changes. But I will say this. I think the general profile of that player is probably going to be between age 23 and 25. And at that age, it's not too late for them to submit to the same process that the kids we were just talking about, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slafkovsky, Gouli, have submitted to. And when they see those guys, Newhook too, Jack Guy, you look at him and the experience he went through this year and what he had to kind of realize and get to and bring. Like, there is a team element here. And you talk about the health of the locker room and the culture that's developing here. It's one thing for me to say it, being around it maybe a little more frequently than you on a daily basis, or any of the other reporters, because we see it. We certainly see it in interacting with the guys. But I think the fans should be able to see it too, because they didn't have a good team this year. And look at the way they competed every single game. They're in a tough league, in a league where 82 games a year as such a young team, it can be very difficult to wrap your head around the level of competition you need to exhibit in order to not get your face kicked in on a nightly basis. And you look at all the 1-goal games they were in this year, and they talk about how positive that was. And I think a lot of people view that with some sort of skepticism. But what it is revealing of is that character and that tight-knit group and that bond that they actually have, that they played for each other. They played for their coach. They played for themselves. They played for pride. They played for the Canadiens. And they didn't fall on their faces despite them having a talent deficiency versus a lot of the teams they're facing within their own division, let alone the whole league. So, and some of those teams that everybody wants them to beat, they beat those teams this year.
You know what? I think I'll end it the same way I ended with Craig. I'm setting you up here. I'm setting you up. If you thought that acquiring Kirby Dach was a very bold move. Do you think this summer you'll see an even bolder move by Gordon and Hughes?
I think this summer we're going to see something similar. I think we're going to see something similar. I don't think they're looking to roll the dice on a player. Like, I don't think that's the idea.
Yeah.
You know, when you think you're the smartest person in the room and that all of a sudden you know something that nobody else knows about one specific player that everybody has formed a certain opinion on, that's a dangerous game to be playing. You better be right if that's in fact the case. But I think, you know, they look for a player that fits within the age wheelhouse that they have their core developing at, a player that is under team control for a certain amount of time, player who still has a ceiling above him but is established to the point where they've already shown a potential to get to that ceiling. And I think being able to acquire one nowadays requires boldness. It requires creativity. Yeah. It requires a certain level of flexibility within your own plan to bring a player like that in. And what you're betting on, no matter who that player is, no matter what their issues are, because there's always something if they're being traded, you're betting on the development system that you put in place, your coach, and your culture within your room to assimilate that player and get him to the level that he needs to be at. And I think I have confidence that no matter who the Canadiens get, I think that system that has developed over the last 2 years, which might be the most important thing of the entire rebuild process so far, that culture that's been developed within the Canadiens, that development that's been developed, is, I think it'll work out for whoever they go out and get.
We'll wait and see, and we'll find out pretty soon, I would imagine. Eric, always good talking to you, my man. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the Grand Prix weekend.
Take care. You too.
All right, there you have it. Marinaro, once again, I want to thank Energy Transportation Group. I want to thank Tibi. I want to thank Playground. And I want to give a shout out to Souvlaki Authentique. I was at 1050 Rue Notre Dame in Lachine last week, and I told you they have several locations, 7 of them, as a matter of fact. And I want to let you know that 1 week from today, I will be at 410 Chemin de la Grande Côte in Boisbriand. On Thursday, June 13, for a show at 1 p.m. So there you have it at Souvlaki Authentique. I hope to see you all there, and then we'll upload that show, and you'll be able to watch it later on that night at around 10 p.m. For Agnello and Sammy at Master Control, I want to thank you all for watching. They're Cavallaro. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. Bittt, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.